Hello, Amanda from Spin Me a Yarn here, and today we're going to have fun. And I say that with as much sarcasm as I can muster. Gauge swatch. Not my favorite thing to do, but unfortunately a necessary evil. These have been blocked, which means they've basically been wet, stretched out, and pinned. You don't necessarily have to do that. I was hoping that it would stop them from curling. But what you will need is a ruler or tape measure. I find this ruler is easier to use because he's stiff. So for the knitting swatches here, so I have a couple of crochet swatches we'll discuss later. For the knitting swatches, I was using trying to meet the gauge of 18 by 24. That means you have 18 stitches across by 24 rows, and it will tell you in the pattern what that measurement should be. In this case, it's a 4-inch by 4-inch square. So we take our handy ruler. Don't mind the knitting needle gauge in the middle, we're just using the ruler. We'll put it up against the edge of one of our stitches. So there it lines up. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. In this yarn, it's a little bit over. 18 comes to about 4 1/4. But in the yarn that I was intending for the project, do the same. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Oh, 16, and we're at 4 1/4. So that's even bigger. And this is why you do gauge swatch. If I had made a sweater in this, just assuming that with that needle it called for and the yarn that I had picked, my sweater would have been almost a size bigger. And I've done that before where I've made a sweater in the gauge it called for, or in the needle it called for to match gauge, and not done it, and it's either too big or too small. So that is why I have this little swatch. As you can see, just laying him on top, he's quite a bit smaller. So I believe I used a 5.5 for these swatches and a 5mm for this swatch. So 2, 4, 6, 8. Oops, let's line them up straight here. Try and unfold them. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. It's right on. And then for the 24, you do it this way, which I did not do a long enough swatch, so we'll count to 12. We'll do for 2 inches. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. We are actually a little under. Oh, I counted too far. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And that's right, the top of that stitch is right at the 2. So there we go. If it called for 5.5, I would have needed the 5mm instead to match gauge. That way, with the number of stitches required and whatever increases or decreases, it would end up the size that I picked. Versus this one would have been a bit bigger, which, if you don't mind baggier sweater, not a big deal. So there's our knitting swatches. Now this one, as you can see, I went a little overboard on that guy, but that is all done in I believe single crochet. And this one, as you can tell by the texture, is done in something else. Now this pattern that I used for the gauge said to do it in pattern. So we want 13 by 11. So I've marked that out here, I believe. Oops. Don't need the millimeter side, we need the inch side. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. It only comes to 3.5. It's supposed to be 4 by 4. And should be 11, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It's only 2.5. So it's really nowhere near the gauge for this swatch, being only single crochet. Now the pattern was a single crochet, a double crochet, single crochet, double crochet, and it gets this nice kind of bubbly texture. Makes it a little harder to count, but as you can see, this swatch is almost perfectly 4 inches. I usually go like a row more, so we'll ignore that row and ignore the casting on row, and that's 4. And then try and pick out the stitches here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and we're right on the 4. So with that crochet pattern, I needed the hook size. These are both done in the same hook size, I believe. Did I make a note of that? I don't see one, so I'm going to assume they were the same, but due to having that double crochet in there, it kind of made it different. So another thing we can do with gauge is a little bit of math. Not necessarily my favorite subject, but if you say have only the 5.5 and you want to make this sweater to be fit, like you don't want it to have that extra wiggle room, then you would do a little bit of math. So say your closest was, oh, this would actually be for the smaller one, but if your closest to the 18 by 24 was 19 by 25, you figure out how many stitches. Let's see. 100 divide 18 is 5.5. 5.5. Oh, okay. So in order to get the right measurement, you figure out how many stitches per inch. Multiply that by your gauge to get how many stitches you need to cast on to match that size. So it also works with if you're going smaller or bigger, you just kind of do your math. So if the pattern called for casting on 100 and it's 18 per 4 inches, you need 5.5 stitches per 4 inches. Since we have 19 stitches per 4 inches, times that by the 5.5, you want to cast on 106 instead. It's easier to do it with measurements, but you can kind of, I probably should do another video on that because that's a little bit more complicated. So for now, we'll say goodbye and have a wonderful day.